Yu-Gi-Oh! That game you probably heard of or played as a kid. You may have moved on to other games, or still have some old cards in the shoebox somewhere, but you probably have been made aware of it at some point, maybe during its peak popularity during its early days, or reminisce the times you played it during the good old days. Or maybe you've always wanted to play it, but for one reason or another, you never touched it. Maybe you're confused by it and never understood the rules. Maybe you saw how the game has evolved since you last touched it and have no clue what any of the new cards do. Or maybe you're just scared to enter a tournament and get trounced out by the top players at your locals. In whatever position you're in, I assure you, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a fantastic trading card game with intense action, creativity, tactics and strategy, and most importantly, fun. However, it would be an understatement to ignore the fact that playing the game itself comes with many caveats, given its complexity, price of entry, and the game generally not being very beginner friendly. I may not be a professional player, but I have a very special relationship with this franchise and have a lot of love for it. And in my 10 plus years of experience with it, I've learned something about this game that can also be applied to any hobby. I've learned that passion is all it takes to enjoy something. Not being the best at it, not having the best tools, not forcing yourself to spend hours on it just to justify your investment. If you're passionate enough, just being there in the moment is all you need. And I want to help people realize that for themselves. So, whether you're here because you're a fan of the anime and its spin-offs, the nostalgia, the shiny cards, the memes, and the community behind it, or you're just a collector, I welcome you to this journey with me. The path ahead may be scary, there may be things you do not like about it, but you'll have a lot of options and tools to help you shape that path to your liking. So come along, let's get our game on, and let's get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Now that sucked.
Hello, my name is Colonel Jackoff, and I'm the funny YouTube sidekick that fills in for him. Because God knows this guy isn't funny. There's no guarantee you'll find this bit funny either. So just enjoy the funny robot voice, I guess.
But first, let's start with some basics. Let's assume you're a completely new and fresh newcomer to the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! And currently, the biggest question in your head is, what is Yu-Gi-Oh? Well, let's start with some quick history. Created by Katsuki Takahashi, originally started as a manga of a young schoolboy named Yugi who completes a puzzle that releases a spirit that takes over his body and challenges people to a shadow game, a game of high stakes that reveals the hearts of men and reveals their true instincts, where often players cheat and are punished with a penalty game. And it was all before the in-world card game of Duel Monsters was introduced that drastically changed the future of the franchise. Later on, the introduction of this game evolved to a physical trading card game, a new anime adaptation to go along with it, and the rest is history. That history being that the franchise is divided into eras named after the anime spin-off of its time. We have Yu-Gi-Oh!, or commonly known as Season 0, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Yu-Gi-Oh! Sexil and Sexil Second, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns, and the current era Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s.
How to play Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a tabletop card game between two players. Both players can build a deck of 40 to 60 cards, with an extra deck of 0 to 15 cards. Each player starts the game with 5 cards in their hand and 8,000 life points. The point of the game is to defeat your opponent by dropping their life points to 0, either by battle, effect damage, or instant win effects. Other conditions of victory include decking out, meaning the turn player has no more cards to draw during their draw phase, or forfeit the game if a player is in a disadvantageous position. The basic cards consist of 3 types: monsters, spell cards, and trap cards. There are also many types of variants to these types. Nowadays, the game is more commonly recognized by its many other monster cards and summoning mechanics. Tribute summoning for monsters of a higher level, ritual summoning for ritual monsters, fusion summoning for fusion monsters, synchro summoning for synchro monsters, XZ summoning for XZ monsters, pendulum summoning, a mechanic introduced by Pendulum Monsters, and Link summoning for Link Monsters. This video itself is a basic introduction to the game and how to get into it, so unfortunately I can't go too in-depth into how the game is played and its many mechanics work. Various other sources go further into detail and do it in a much better way than I can. I would recommend channels such as Simo and his How to Play Yu-Gi-Oh! Series for a quick and easy introduction to the game's functions. For a more in-depth look, I would recommend MST.TV, where channel host Tom Box makes videos of rulings and more detailed topics such as how the battle phase works, also providing mindful discussions, deck lists, and combo videos, along with co-host Nishi providing insight on the market on what moves to make in order to make wise investments. I would highly recommend this channel as it has helped me and others get better at the game itself. Or if you're a history fan or just enjoy general Yu-Gi-Oh related content, I would recommend YouTube channel Mega Capital G and Simo's The History of Yu-Gi-Oh series if you're inclined to that sort of thing.
Where to play Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yu-Gi-Oh is traditionally a tabletop game you play with friends or strangers from across the table at your locals who may just become friends. In today's world, especially during 2020 and 2021, Yu-Gi-Oh has emphasized more on online play. If you're still a fan of traditional tabletop play, there is the option of remote duels, which offer tournaments officially sanctioned by Konami. However, this method is something I would not recommend to a newcoming player, or a returning one, or even at all. This method, while a great substitute for the time being, requires investments in a lot of equipment you normally would not have, unless you're a streamer or something. There's also the problem of internet speeds throughout the world. There's also the inherent fear of cheating being even easier. Luckily, there exist many online, fan-made, 100% free simulators for your convenience. The most popular one, and one I would recommend the most, is Dueling Book. Dueling Book is a manual browser-based simulator, meaning you don't need any downloads, just create an account and go. You have access to all the cards, new, old, and newly announced, so you can test them. The biggest benefit of Dueling Book is by being fully manual, you get the closest feeling to a real game, where the decisions are yours and yours alone, as you have to keep track of rulings and card interactions. There are some downsides to it, but these may vary from person to person. Sometimes there may not be enough judges online at certain times of the day, sometimes the games might take a long time, and that might be a detractor for people on the schedule. I just find the overall look and feel very sluggish, and I'm not always right about card rulings. I have played this game for a long time, but I never said I was good. Overall, Dueling Book is a fantastic option that's regarded as the best place to play for casuals and high-tier players alike. Dueling Books works on almost any web browser, including mobile. Next is EDO Pro Project Ignis. An offshoot of the YGO Pro Percy family of Yu-Gi-Oh simulators, EDO Pro is the most current, fully automated, 100% free simulator. All it requires is a download by joining their official Discord server. This is a download, but it's not that big of a deal, and chances are that if you're watching this video is that you already have a Discord account. It's simple, clean, plus all the same features as Dueling Book, being free and having access to any card you want in any format. It is also very customizable, and it's very easy to do if you have a decent computer and basic computer literacy. It generally auto-updates itself with newly added cards. There may be occasional bugs, but I have never run into any, and those that exist are usually fixed quickly. There are also some mandatory updates that require some extra work, but that's a fair price to pay for not paying anything at all. If you do have problems, however, the very same Discord server has a tech support channel that would gladly help you, and while you're at it, it has a pretty good community to help you get better at the game too. EDO Pro is a great place for returning players given its fully automated nature, allowing you to play the game and always be aware of activation windows, effect windows, and not missing any effects. This very feature, however, is generally the biggest criticism for automated simulators. It can be argued that by being very hand-holdy, people won't learn anything from it, which is true. I have run into many casual duels where people are just pressing buttons. However, if you're ever just pressing buttons, you're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh, you're playing a point-and-click game. This isn't a fighting game where at the most basic level, pressing buttons might yield some results. In a strategic card game, pressing buttons, or just activating a card willy-nilly, will result in you getting blown out. If you do care about learning the game and how it works, EDO Pro can also assist in that, as instead of just clicking a button, you can read the card and understand why you can't or can't summon or activate something. The biggest benefit to EDO Pro is not only its speed, but also the fact that you cannot take moves back. If you mess something up, it's all on you. This might appear like a downside, but it is one of my favorite features, because in a casual game with friends, yeah, they might let you take your card back, but in a real game against someone you don't know, or you're in the tournament, they won't let you make a move back. If you screw up your combo, you either have to hold that or try to fix it by moving forward. The best lesson is always failure. The biggest downside, however, is the platform limitations. Currently, EDO Pro works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, so pretty much only on a computer as a downloadable program. But hey, it doesn't take that much space, and even the most garbage modern laptop or notebook can run it. Now, Dueling Nexus is a good in-between as it is both browser-based and automatic. It has the downsides and benefits of both Dueling Book and EDO Pro, but it also works great on mobile. It is where the casual people I know play the most, and I can can clearly see why. Honorable mentions go to YGO Omega if you think EDO Pro's engine is too simple and want to put your fancy graphics card to good use.
Also, this thing is coming. We don't know anything yet. Other Thankanami will probably screw it up somehow. Old versus new.
Basically, catching up.
Now you're probably wanting me to tell you what deck you should play as a beginner or a returning player, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because you might not know what I'm talking about. So let's take a minute to catch up for those who haven't played in a while. Or you could just skip ahead, you probably hurt yourself, but I don't care. Assuming the point where you might have dropped off is difficult, so I'll be as generic as possible. From conversations, most people I know dropped around the 5Ds era. So those people I say, hi, welcome back. Synchros are still good, but if you like synchros, you'll like link-based decks too. With Hakivi decks, they match up pretty well. The biggest drop-off for people en masse has to be the introduction of pendulums. If you quit the game because you might thought pendulums ruined the game, you were kinda right but also wrong. The mechanic was always generic and had crazy potential, but you never had every deck in the meta run pendulums. During its heyday, the only competitively successful pendulum decks were those that used it as an extra tool rather than the whole basis of it. It wasn't until Pendulum Magicians with Electromite that we saw what a real pendulum deck can do. But by that time, it was past its prime. Nowadays, you don't even see a lot of pendulum decks, and the ones that remain are a shadow of their former selves. Normally, I would tease those kinds of people who initially quit due to those ridiculous fears, but I can't blame them. As the game evolved, Konami also realized that pendulums were a mistake, and has constantly tried to correct that mistake. Though I can't verify if people quit during the introduction of Link Monsters, it was a big point of contention. I kinda sympathize with those people as well, as the initial release was kinda bumpy, at least in the TCG. However, in about a year or so, it got to the point where any deck had a designated Link Monster, or didn't need Link Monsters at all. My point is, whenever a new mechanic, monster type, or rule is introduced, you shouldn't automatically dismiss it. Take a second, grow up, and adapt, because that's what a real duelist would do.
Oh boy, here comes the anime segment.
Now let's take a moment to catch up with the anime folks as well, as they are pretty important too, and there's more to the series than just the Battle City arc. Or for people about my age of 20-somethings in the 2020s, there's more than just the first seasons of 5Ds. As previously stated, these are all the animated series. Now if you don't care about them or don't have time to watch all of them, here's a quick and very opinionated summary of all of them. Spoiler warnings for all of them ahead. Duel Monsters is the quirky original we all love, and every series replicates it in some form. It's iconic and beloved, even though the Pokemon rules of the first seasons are incredibly infuriating. No, Yugi, you can't use a normal monster to attack your own equipped spell to disable a field spell.
Now, Stone Soldier, destroy the moon!
You can skip GX because GX has no value, and I don't blame you. Told you this was very opinionated. 5Ds is a fantastic series and a great watch, although that first season is a bit rough. They always tend to be that way. You can skip Sexel and jump straight to Sexel Second. All you need to know is that Yuma, future Yugi, and Astral, Space Yami, gotta catch all them numbers to restore Astral's memory, but the writers forgot. Shark is the Kaiba, but Kaito is also the Kaiba, given that he has the 2500 level 8 dragon with eyes in its name, but he doesn't antagonize Yuma that much, but both Shark and Kaito have a sibling that's either brainwashed or hospitalized, so all three become good friends. Kind of. There's the world's greatest dad and his three sons he doesn't even call by their name, Best Boy, Tumblr, and who? The big evil is a Mega Man villain, and also Super Saiyan shenanigans. Sexel Second has chronic back pain from carrying all of Sexel in his back with better writing, better duels, and a much more interesting plot. Arc 5 had a great promise of being the crossover series that pays homage to the previous series, but still does its own thing. But due to the awful writing, getting too big for its britches, by introducing too many characters, instead of being a proper arc with a good beginning, exciting middle, and a satisfying end, it ends up looking like this. An okay beginning, sky-high middle that spends too much time in the synchro dimension, and has a 90-degree drop-off towards the end. Thankfully, if you have no attachment to the previous series, you can comfortably skip this one if you like, and it's very much forgettable, but you still take the damage. Frames can be best described as, wow, these characters suck, but Revolver School. Wow, these characters suck, but Soulburner's pretty cool. Wow, these characters fucking suck, but the story's pretty cool, and Ai's the best character in the franchise. It does a better job than Arc 5 with the story, but does a piss poor job with its characters, so much that nobody likes the protagonist, and all the likable characters change for the worse. Like Aoi going through 3 different phases and eating shit in all of them, Go going from a cool wrestler Joey type to having Cyberpunk 2077 injected directly into his cock, then back to boring, Soulburner / Takeru being a cute boy with a hot boy alter ego into a piss boy with a pissy boy alter ego, and I going from please shut the fuck up to please spit on me. Lastly and certainly least, if I could care less about 7s, I would forget what the number 7 even is. Now back to the card game. There's a big gap to cross for people of an older generation, primarily because of familiarity bias and them being more comfortable with the ways of old. We all have to respect other duelists and their taste, but at the same time, one has to admit that the ways of old have to change because that's the way a long-standing game can keep its player base, by frequently updating it and making it feel like it's a new game every time. Basically what I'm saying is, please shut up about GOAT format. I don't care about GOAT format, shut your goddamn mouth. There's also been some significant changes to the way most people play the game now. There has never been any set rotation, meaning you can play both old and new cards in any format, but generally most people play the new stuff. Most people also know what the real rules are, and have done away with the old playground rules of just summoning tribute monsters for no cost. Normal monsters aren't good anymore, unless they're really big, combo pieces, or they're blue eyes. There are the summoning mechanics I mentioned previously, and while you can play decks like this, you will probably not get a lot of positive results. And also, priority fast effects aren't a thing anymore, and I have no idea why they were a thing. So you can't just summon that and instantly pop cards like it's a quick effect, because it's not. Speaking of that, he's back from the liquor store, but by the time he did, you forgot that you loved him, and he forgot you were his child. What I mean is that you should check up on the current ban list as well. Cards that were in the Forbidden and Limited list during your time have probably been changed to be unplayable or incredibly less powerful in the current game due to power creep. Dark Arm Dragon being a prime example, an absolute force to be reckoned with in its time, responsible for Teledad, one of the most powerful decks in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. But with emergency teleport still limited and destruction not being that powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's not the force it used to be.
What you'll need.
So, with all that said, you're ready to start, but you can't drive a car without the wheels. So what do you need before you start your journey? Well, first, you need a deck, obviously. A deck box to keep your deck in. You can go cheap on this one. The only thing that matters is that they can all fit and that you always keep it within your line of sight. Sleeves to protect your card. Cheap or medium is fine here. Usage there will happen either way, no matter how gentle you are with your cards. You can also opt for single color or different colors to differentiate between your main deck and extra deck. Next, you're gonna need a mat. You can go cheap with a single large computer mat, but you may want to invest more if you want more flagrancy. You have the option of rubber or cloth. I would recommend any mat with zones on them. Now it's zoning and aligning columns matter in Yu-Gi-Oh! What I would not recommend are paper mats from structure decks, as they won't last very long. And if your mat looks like this, stop it, get some help.
How to invest.
Now that covers what you need in terms of accessories. Now you need the actual cards. But before I tell you what cards to play, you need to know how to invest in those cards. We're almost there, I swear. Now this is very dependent on the deck you play, but these are some general tips. Invest in cards that have multiple printings already. Try to target lower rarity versions such as commons, rares, and or super rares at the highest. If a card you want is only available as an ultra or secret, unless you need it, it's safe to just sit and wait for a reprint. These reprints generally come in the form of megatins towards the end of the year,
or reprint sets.
If not in a lower rarity, a second print generally brings the price down. Learn about alternatives. This requires a bit of research and knowledge depending on the deck you play, but basically there's such a large pool of cards at your disposal. A lot of them do the same thing but differently, and they might be cheaper alternative for what you want to do. For example, you don't need Forbidden Droplets if you want generic effect negation. Effect Veiler does just fine. It's a bit clunky at times, but you can buy Veilers for pennies. If you want something even better, you can invest in Infinite Impermanence. It has had multiple reprints, most recently as a premium gold rare. It's more expensive, being currently about $20 per copy, but at least it's not the $100+ you'll pay for each copy of Droplets. Similarly, you don't need Lightning Storm. Evenly Matched has had enough reprints and it does the same thing. Yes, Lightning Storm is objectively better, but Evenly Matched does have its benefits as well, and it accomplishes the same result. The point is, while it's worth getting the cheaper alternative, you also have to take into consideration how well it works against the pricier option. If you're starting and playing casually, yes, go cheap. But if you want to play with better cards, you will have to invest a bit more. You also have to keep track of market fluctuations by new releases or meta trends. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not inherently a pay-to-win game. You can have the shiniest deck in all the lands with the #1 deck in the meta you copied off some dude online, but if you do not know how to use those shiny cards properly, you're still going to lose. And the person with the cheaper cards that knows how to play their deck and how to beat the shiny cards won't win all the time, but some of the time. There's also the nature of card games being decided at the luck of the draw, so take that into consideration as well. The best advice on investing I can give to a newer player is structure decks. Konami seems to make less of these, or at least import them to the TCG, but they are a great tool for newcomers. Generally, a structure deck comes pre-built with one-offs at around $10, so with $30 and 3 structure decks, you will generally have a pretty good build, and all you need is some basic staples you can buy online. And I haven't made this obvious, by the way, these are all online prices. Why? Because you should never buy any sealed products. It's gambling. Structure decks are best because they're all fixed and there is no randomness to them. You may think you can make your money back by pulling the money card or getting a whole playset of that one card you want, but unless the card you're looking for is a common, you won't, and it also won't be worth as much. You can buy online with TCG Player, Card Market for Eurofolks, Troll and Toad, and eBay. Just make sure you do your research and be cautious of who you're buying your cards from, and also make sure they have a good reputation and a fair price.
And now, what to play?
And now, we're finally here. The part you wanted to hear so badly. The part you've all been waiting for. What I believe is the best deck for you to play. Now, if I haven't made this clear enough, or you just forgot, I am not by any means a professional player, if that means anything. I'm just a guy, I think, but I've walked through all facets of life when it comes to this game. I fell in love with it by the anime, played online, dropped off for a while, then came back, began building my first real deck, then eventually building more decks and investing more into decks I like, and building more competitive builds, but still have an appreciation for the casual scene. I've played this game for a good portion of my life, and while the only real accomplishment I've ever made is first place at my locals, I know the one deck that can best benefit you as a beginning player. Are you ready? Here it comes. The best deck for you is whatever the hell you want. Now, you probably were expecting me to say Heroes or Blackwings, but so long as it doesn't have banned cards, you can play whatever you want. Ojamas, Lurlas, Eldritch Amazement, Utopia, Super Heavy Samurai. Hell, you can even play this mess I found online. Jesus Christ. The beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the only restriction you have is deck size and the Forbidden Unlimited list. There is no set rotation like in Pokemon or Magic. From Legend of Blue Eyes to Duelist Alliance to Lightning Overdrive and beyond, and even if you like those all banned cards, you can play traditional format, or Duelist Alliance format, or Savage Strike format, or Jerk Off to Go format for the 350th time. With over 10,000 cards at your disposal, you have no limits on what you can build. And the best part is that you can tailor it to your style. Sure, you can copy a deck list you find online, but maybe you don't like some of their choices, or you want it to go another way. Maybe there's a deck you know isn't competitive or good, but you like their playstyle. Play that deck anyways, and get good with it until you can make it competitive. And if not, just have fun with it. You can also just be an online player on Dueling Book and be fine with that. I played online for a long time until I decided to get into the physical TCG. I started cheap with Phantasm Spirals, a garbage deck that requires no extra deck and relies on traps and normal monsters. It was around Dark Saviors when Sky Strikers started becoming one of the best decks in the entire game. The deck was inherently garbage compared to everything else at the time, but no deck had a response to Heat Wave, so I got a couple of cheeky wins out of that. Did I win all the time? Absolutely not. Did I have fun? Hell yeah, I did. Sitting across a stranger and engaging with them and connecting through cardboard cards is the best feeling in the world, and good God do I miss it. I eventually went from that to Should All Dinosaurs. I still didn't win a lot of the time, but it was definitely a better deck. Then I made a real competitive leap with Salamangreats, and that's the deck that got me at my first place at my locals with a solid Salamangreat engine and a bunch of hand traps. At that time, the most popular decks were Thunder Dragons, Orcas, and Lunalights, so it was certainly a hard hill to climb. And from there I kept going with Dino Thunder, Pure Dinos, staying on Salamangreats after the January 2020 ban list, to Tri-Brigade, Eldritch, Scrap Dinos, and Nesters. And that's without the many casual competitive attempts at multiple decks while playing online. There's so many cards out there. There's a perfect deck for everyone, with a perfect way to tailor it to your style or budget. And that's what this series is about. Get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we'll go down into many beginner and fan favorite decks, breaking down their playstyle, and ultimately coming up with a pure build, budget-friendly build, and a competitive build. And so, I welcome you to this journey with me. A journey into the beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building and strategy crafting. Thank you so much for watching, and if there's anything to take after watching this, should you take anything that I say seriously? Fuck no.
Thank you for watching. Colonel Jackoff, and I once found a pot of greed stuck inside Mara. I don't remember how it got. Join us next time. I have a confession to make. I'm not actually a robot. This is just metal armor superglued to my skin. Why? Because I'm a crackhead. That's why. Goodbye.